And the racism we're seeing is just as equally horrifying and terrifying as the magical creatures and weird beings that we're coming face to face with. Hey, it's Kristen, and today we are talking about the first 5 episodes of HBO's new series, Lovecraft Country. Thank you to HBO for the screeners to check out this series. This will be a spoiler-free review, and we're just going to dive into it a little bit, talk about what works, what doesn't work. So this project is based on the Matt Ruff novel of the same name, starring Jonathan Majors, Jurnee Smollett, Courtney B. Vance, and Michael K. Williams. The story follows Atticus Freeman as he goes on a road trip with some friends and family across the 1950s Jim Crow America in search of his missing father. This begins a struggle to survive and overcome both the racist terrors of white America and the terrifying monsters that could be ripped from a Lovecraft paperback. Consider subscribing if you like my videos, and drop down in the comments and let me know your thoughts on Lovecraft Country. Are you excited for the show? Have you already checked it out? And do you want me to continue reviewing this and do the last 5 episodes of the season when it ends? Let me know your thoughts. First of all, it's really unique the way that this whole premise is set up, because we're following this overarching story throughout the season, but also each episode kind of feels like a standalone as well as it dives into sort of different genres in a way. The first episode we're on a road trip, the second episode we discover a world of magic, the third episode we're diving into like a haunted house, the fourth episode gives us like an Indiana Jones type of vibe, and the fifth episode really felt like a Twilight Zone sort of story. And I found that really intriguing because I don't think I've really seen a show like that where they really feel like they tackle these different genres and different vibes in each episode, but are still telling the same story with the same characters. I think this project is also really interesting because, you know, H.P. Lovecraft was a notorious racist, and we're taking his kind of legacy of creating these horror-themed stories with a sci-fi twist and inserting black people into these stories. And I think it's really exciting that the story focuses on the black experience. This is something we actually discussed a bit in my recent podcast episode of Pop Culture Planet, so if you haven't checked that out, I will leave a link to it over here. But, you know, sci-fi and horror, I think people of color in general have not always been fully accepted in that space, and I think it's great to see that in this story. Our main characters are black people who enjoy sci-fi, they enjoy horror, they are sci-fi nerds, and they are somehow getting sucked into their own sci-fi adventure. It sort of reminds me a little bit of Hamilton in a way, where we're taking this story and putting black people in the forefront and people of color in the forefront of it. Even the more modern music that they use kind of reminds me of that as well a little bit, and I think that that's really important. The fact that the showrunner of this project, Misha Green, is a black woman, and she's able to come together to tell this story with other like-minded people. I think we're really getting an authentic story of what it's like to be a person of color and appreciate sci-fi and horror, and also balance that with the actual horrors of what it was like dealing with the racism in 1950s. I think they're telling this dual story, and the racism we're seeing is just as equally horrifying and terrifying as the magical creatures and weird beings that we're coming face to face with. I do think it's really cool that Jordan Peele is an executive producer for this project as well. I think that this definitely feels like something up his alley, you know, where it's tackling issues but also celebrating black people in horror and sci-fi. Additionally, they even tackle what it's like being a woman in a man's world and the desire to even the playing field regardless of race, gender, or sexuality. I think this cast is really strong. You have so many talented players in this show. Jonathan Majors and Jurnee Smollett in particular are standouts. They really show how resilient these characters are, especially Jurnee's character, and how they keep pushing through to get answers and survive throughout all the traumas they're facing. The aesthetic is great. You have these really beautiful costumes, and they really set the tone for the series. I think the monsters look really cool. They look very scary. There was also some great cameos that I was surprised by. I don't want to spoil too much, but if you're a Drag Race fan, you might want to keep your eyes peeled. I also really like that they are mixing time periods in a way where we're set in the 1950s, but the music that we're hearing to basically soundtrack the show is more modern music. I think it just further shows more subtly the parallels between the 1950s and today, and the struggles that black people and people of color are still dealing with. I also gotta say, they pack a lot in these first 5 episodes. Honestly, the first 2 episodes alone, I was like, that could have been the whole season because so much happened. And I think that in some cases it works, and in some cases it makes the story feel a bit muddled, like they're trying to do a little bit too much at once, that it becomes a bit overwhelming and a little bit hard to follow at times. Something that kind of pulled me back a little bit from fully loving this show, at least the first 5 episodes that we've seen, is that at times it does get pretty graphic. Like, there were moments where I was kind of taken aback a little bit and was like, I don't know, this is a lot. There was a moment in particular where, like, it felt like it kind of came out of nowhere and was very different and jarring from the rest of the show in terms of just trying to, like, shock you and freak you out, and I didn't really like that. But I do think that there were a lot of other great things that went on in this show, and it does seem like a project that will open up a lot of really interesting discussions about race, gender, sexuality, science fiction, and Lovecraftian horror, and like I mentioned, just the fact that they're able to bring in so many different genres and make this project feel a little bit like something you haven't seen before, the way that they tackle the different episodes and format them. I do think that this is a show that seems very intriguing, and I'm curious to see what they're gonna do in the second half of the season. So let me know what you guys think, and if you want me to review the second half once the season's over. If you guys like this one, you can check out more of my TV show reviews right over here, and I will catch you in my next video. See ya!